when you look on that application, that job requisition, usually you'll see that it says road warrior. And road warrior, they're not talking about the old wrestler. They're talking about hitting that road because you will be traveling a whole lot. So welcome to Debt Free in IT. I'm your host, Mike. This podcast is for anyone who's looking to get into the IT industry, whether it's for a career change or you're just interested. I think you come to the right place. Today's episode is about the 5 least stressful jobs in IT. So stress on the job is usually going to depend on the company you work at first. So every company is going to have some type of stress. So it's hard to leave all the stress. But if we take a look at a job role and we look at the same job role within 2 different companies, 9 times out of 10, one company, that job role may be laid back. The other company, that job role may be putting out fires all day. So then we're going to look at some causes of stress. So when you think about stress, a lot of times in the work environment, that's going to all depend on your workload. It's going to end up causing some stress. Deadlines that you may have. So if you're working on different projects or you're working on multiple projects, that causes some stress because most of the time you don't want to feel like you're the one that's holding up the project. Then also, of course, low pay goes into the equation. So if you're not getting paid what you think you're worth, 9 times out of 10, that's going to make the job more stressful because you're worried about your income. You're worried about the financial aspect to where you may not be getting paid enough to where you can pay your bills and everything like that. So that causes some added stress. And then, of course, the big one for most people is probably being on call. So I think being on call is probably the most stressful one out of all of them. So like I said, that on call is something else, especially if you're at a large environment or something like that. Just the aspect of not being able to do what you want on the weekends or something like that. You know, you may have to be around or have a phone around or have a PC around. That way, if it's something pop off, you can remote in and resolve that issue. So for most folks, they don't really like the on-call aspect. Like I said, depending on the environment, depending on the size of the team, depending on how often you go on call, it can be stressful or it cannot be a big deal. So today I got 5 jobs that's usually not that stressful in the IT industry. So the first job role I have on my list is the IT support specialist. And this is looking at it from a tier 1 perspective. So usually in tier 1, it's mainly for someone that's just entering in IT. So this may be someone's first role. A lot of times you're doing issues similar to like resetting passwords, basic troubleshooting. So a lot of times in this environment, you don't usually have too much stress because anytime you get a complex issue, 9 times out of 10, you're escalating the issue up to the next level. So this is where you get a feel for the IT industry without having that added stress or that added pressure. So usually this tier 1 support role, like I said, the only added stress may be if you're on the phones. A lot of people hate the phones. So sometimes just being on the phones is a stress in itself. So a lot of people don't really start to love IT till they get off a position to where they work, where they're not on these phones anymore. So, but like I said, the IT technical support tier 1, this position, like I said, usually stress isn't too high because of anytime you get a complex issue or you get a complicated issue, 9 times out of 10, if you can't solve it, then you got somebody to escalate that issue up to. So the next position on my list that's not as stressful as some others, this position you don't hear talked about a lot. This position is the technical writer. So when you look at it from a communication aspect, we have user manuals for a lot of applications we use. We have documentation for a lot of applications we use. We have guides. Any kind of guides going into any deep dives or any kind of technical implementation, a lot of times it's a technical writer who created those documents, who created those guides, and who created those manuals. So in this position, usually you probably still have deadlines because you're not just gonna free roam. So you're gonna have deadlines of when some documents need to be due, or when some documents need to go public, or when some manuals for an application needs to go out. So you're going to have those deadlines, but in most cases, it's not going to be anything like if you're doing networking where all of a sudden this network goes down and all of a sudden your phone's lighting up and everything's on fire. So it's not going to be that type of pressure because with this, you usually have a list. You usually already know what's coming up. You already know, oh, I got a deadline next month I need to meet. I got a deadline the month after that. I got a deadline in a couple of weeks. So that's it. That makes it a little bit less stressful because you already know what's coming up. To where, from a support standpoint, every day you don't know what you're going to get hit with. You know some things that's going to be there. You know some things that's coming up. But in the IT world, especially in networking, anything can happen. So you can go in some days. I remember going in some days where I stayed at my desk all day, didn't hardly do much. Then I remember going in some other days I never saw my desk. So like I said, you never know what happens. You never know what fires you need to put out. So this technical writer role, I think, is a good position for those that don't want to be in a stressful environment. So the next position on my list that's usually not as stressful as some others, especially not as stressful as any kind of support roles, that would be an IT trainer or an instructor. So if you look at a lot of companies, they often have trainer positions where you may be going out to different other companies that y'all may be a vendor of, and you're training their employees on this new application or on this new product. Or you could be an IT instructor where you may teach for a school and you teach about this certain product or this certain technology. Let's say you're a networking instructor or you're a cybersecurity instructor. This way you're still in the IT realm, but like I say, you're not as hands-on as someone doing IT support or network support, to where usually you're not going to have those fires that you need to put out, and you're not going to come and get hit from the blind side with issues that's going on. So most of the time you already can predict what's going on. As long as you got your lesson plans, you know what you're going to be teaching that day. You're prepared for your classes. Usually this is a low stress environment. So any kind of IT trainer roles, with a lot of those roles, they do travel a lot. So that's one caveat to it. If you're not, when you look on that application, that job requisition, usually you'll see that it says road warrior. And road warrior, they're not talking about the old wrestler. They're talking about hitting that road, because you will be traveling a whole lot. So a lot of times with these trainers, you go to different organizations, like I said, and you'll train them on this certain technology or with this certain vendor product. Real quick, if you're enjoying this episode, get ready for my up-and-coming newsletter, The Log Files. This is a weekly newsletter to help you start your IT career with practical advice and tips, powered by yours truly. So I'll be launching it soon. It'll be packed with actionable advice, resources, and insights to kickstart your IT journey. The link is in the description and also pinned in the comments. Now back to the episode. So the next job that's usually not as stressful as some others within the IT industry, and that would be the help desk job. So the help desk analyst is what most places call it. This help desk, like I said, is just like that tier 1 IT support role, but with this, it's more focused on addressing customer or employee technical issues via the ticket system. So usually you're the first line of support. So someone's having an issue, they call in, you're the one picking up the phone, you're responsible for getting their information, getting their location, getting a callback number. You may even have to remote into their PC and take screenshots of what the issue is. And then you have to determine who that issue is going to. So you're the one that's routing that issue. You're the one that's saying that, oh, this something network needs to solve. This something server needs to solve. You're the one routing that issue to those different places. So in most cases, the only thing that's usually real stressful is, for some people, is if you're on the phones a lot. Sometimes being on the phones can be a little stressful, like I stated earlier. But with this role, if you're doing in-house support to where everyone that's calling works for that organization, usually it's a lot less stressful, because usually most of the time those people that's calling in, they're not going to have no attitudes or anything like that. But now if you're somewhere where the public is calling in, yeah, you're liable to hear anything in that aspect. And also you take way more calls. So in-house, you may do about 20 to 30 calls your shift. But if you're somewhere where you're a big call center and you're taking calls, it ain't nothing to see somebody done took 100 calls for the day. So like I said, the volume is a little bit different. But like I said, this help desk is usually not as stressful, because at this position, you're not responsible for any systems. So you're not supporting any servers. You're not supporting any firewalls. You're not supporting any networking equipment. So if something goes down, it's up to you to report it. If you get the call that this is down, you report it to the right team. But after that, you step back from it. You report the issue, you send that ticket, you call that person, you step back from it. So it's on them to resolve it. It's on them to figure out what's going on. So this is usually less stressful, but also when we look at the less stressful jobs, some of them, if you're looking at the pay wise, some of them, because they're not as stressful, you don't have as much responsibility. Some of them, they're not going to pay as well either. That's why most people start out in some of these positions, except for the exception would probably be the technical writer, because most time they get paid pretty good. So, but every other that's entry-level support, a lot of times they don't get that high pay because of you may not have a lot of responsibility at this level, which is why most people niche down, specialize, and then go into a particular field, whether that be networking or whether that be cybersecurity. But this help desk analyst role, like I said, is one that's usually least stressful as some other roles within the industry. And then the last role that's usually not as stressful as some other positions in IT, that's going to be desktop support. So usually this desktop support role, most of the time you deal with a lot of hardware. So you may be the one that's repairing PCs, fixing hard drives and PCs, re-imaging PCs, which is pretty much if I get a PC with an issue, I can't fix it, I just re-image it to like a brand new computer, a brand new OS on it. So re-imaging PCs. A lot of times in this group, actually, this is where, for me, this is where I started to like IT again. So before this position, I was on them phones. And I tell you now, I did not like them phones. I was on the phones for a couple of years. So I hated IT the whole time I was on those phones. I was trying to do every little side hustle I could to get off them phones. But once I got the desktop support, I started to fall in love with IT again, because in this position, for one thing, you're not on the phones. And then, you're dealing with hardware. So that's one of the first things, as someone that's learning IT, that's one of the first things you come upon, taking apart your home computer, replacing hard drives and things like that. So I was doing some of the similar things in this environment where I'm replacing hard drives, replacing PCs. And then pretty much, you work from a ticketing system most of the time. So it's like I knew what was going on day to day. Every once in a while you have an urgent issue. If you're in an organization where you got urgent departments, if their PC mess up, yeah, you might have an urgent issue then. But at this point, you don't really manage anything that affects the whole organization. So worst case scenario, if you re-image your PC and it's all messed up when you deliver it, it's still in the whole grand scheme of things, it's not really that big because it's only one PC that's messed up. It's not every PC in the organization. So at this level, like I said, usually the pay is a little bit better, but you still don't really manage anything that's going to affect the whole organization. A lot of times when you see that pay go up, you look at what that group is managing. A lot of times they're managing things that, if this goes down, it affects the whole organization. If this server goes down, it affects the whole organization. If this closet goes down, this network closet goes down, this whole organization that works in this side of the hall, they're down too. So a lot of times you look at those things of what their group support. But this desktop role, like I said, some people may call it a technical support role also. Some people may call it a break fix role. But all of these roles is usually, like I said, you're working with hardware. You're not really dealing with too much software besides installing applications for different users who you're sending their PCs to. But other than this job is really not too stressful. So this is, like I said, this is one of my favorite jobs too, because like I said, it's where I started to fall in love with IT again. So desktop support is one of my 5 least stressful jobs in the IT industry. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Hopefully you found some value in this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, you can follow me at DebtFreeInIT. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me at debtfreeInIT@gmail.com, or you can visit debtfreeInITwithMike.com. Other than that, I'll see you next week. Peace.